So today we will speak on the topic supremacy of Krishna. In the last two sessions, we have seen that how we are not this body and we are actually spirit souls. And we have also seen some of the scientific examples of that. And also, we have seen the scriptural evidences that modern science is able to find in recent days. So I will just recap a few things or some additional things, then I will enter into today's topic. So, if we discuss the epistemology, we analyze the epistemology, which actually means that how we derive knowledge. Epistemology means that how we are deriving knowledge. So, there are two ways we have already discussed. One is scientific and another is Vedic. So Vedic epistemology is based on the scriptures and modern or scientific epistemology is based on the experiments and observation. So the scientific epistemology has two parts, that is empiricism and rationalism. Now this empiricism is based on observation, what you observe in this nature, and we learn. And then based on our observation we think and conclude some theories. So this is actually basically scientific epistemology. This is how science is developed. But these has their own limitations. Like empiricism has limitations of imperfect senses. Like whatever we observe, this may be erroneous. Our senses are not actually unlimited and they are not pure, because we already know that our eyes cannot see beyond the range of visible range. Even if we take the help of the instruments, they are also limited, right? They have their own capacity. So most of the things are not accessible to us because we have imperfect senses and instruments. And then we have the tendency to be illusioned, like in the mirage. We see it as the water, but it is actually mirage. So whatever we are seeing, that may not be true. So this is the tendency to be illusioned. And then based on thinking, we have rationalism, but that is also having some of the limitations, that we are prone to mistakes. Whatever we are thinking and concluding, that may be full of mistakes. And we have the tendency to cheat. Even if we are getting the right information or the true information, we may cheat people. Like in the scientific community, it often happens that one scientist is actually subduing other to publish his own paper, which may not be true also all the time. If someone is publishing something which expresses the truth, and the other scientist who is having some administrative power, he actually subdues the truth or publishes by his own name, all these politics happen. So we have the tendency to commit mistakes and tendency to cheat. That is the defect of rationalism. So we see that scientific epistemology, what we are having, it obviously has some merits, but it has demerits also, right? So now if we explain and analyze a little bit, then we see that these two branches, empiricism and rationalism, what they basically do. Empiricism forms a set of axioms which lead to understanding. Like we are observing the nature and we are concluding some axiom or some kind of conclusion out of it. So this is the nature of empiricism. And what rationalism does, based on those axioms which we create based on our observation of the nature, we verify the understanding. Like we may say that Newton observed that this apple is falling from the tree. So this is observation. And based on this observation, he is thinking what may be the cause. So that is rationalism. So empiricism basically forms a set of axioms which lead to understanding, and rationalism begins with that set of axioms and verify that understanding by logical thinking. So these two processes feed into each other. Empiricism is producing axioms, rationalism is consuming that, and again rationalism is producing some logical understanding. By that we can again form another axioms. So this is basically science. This is the refinement process how science is working. So that is why we see our truths are getting refined. In case of atomic theory, there are so many versions of that: Rutherford, Bohr, Sommerfeld. So this is the thing, because empiricism and rationalism feed into each other and the truth is refined. So basically the truth is changing in scientific epistemology. So that is a very great demerit, because whatever is true today may not be true 10 years later. So according to the scientific findings today, we are seeing that, okay, this thing we are considering to be true, and we take decision based on this assumption that this may be the true. But 10 years later, we conclude that no, this was actually not true. Then all our decisions which are made on the current truth will have a irrecoverable damage due to that decisions. Like for example, the scientists tried to uh, go for the chemical fertilizers to produce more and more. And at that time, they did not find any kind of health problems or maybe side effects of those chemical fertilizers, and they allowed it. Then recently they are finding no, there are so many carcinogenic substances and many things. So they are telling that it is better to go back to organic fertilizers. So now, some years ago, they were telling that there is no harm if we use chemical fertilizers, but the production will increase. So that was the truth at that time. But later on, they found that no, this is actually harmful for health. So this is how the truth is changing. But we are taking decision based on the current truth. And when that truth is changing, we may suffer a big loss, because when we consume the foods which are generated by chemical fertilizers, already some of the toxins are there in our body. So if in a later scientific finding we may conclude that okay, the organic fertilizers are best for health, we cannot do anything because the toxins are always there, already there in our body. So this is the disaster, that as the truth is changing, so if we take the decision based on the current truth, it may have a permanent damage. So that is one of the demerit. But for those who do not accept the scriptures, they have no other way. They have to live with all these limitations and drawbacks. Only by observation and thinking we cannot arrive at the truth, right? That is why the truth is changing in case of scientific epistemology. Now, if we see the Vedic epistemology, then it already provides us a set of axiomatic truths in the form of scriptures. Whatever is written there, they are axiomatic truths. Now, this can be verified, and this also can be digested by rational thought. And these two processes also feed into each other. So this is also a kind of science. So Vedic system of knowledge is also a science, but it is different in nature. It already has axiomatic truths in the form of scriptures, and that can be verified, and verified knowledge can be rationally thought and digested. And again, with that understanding, we can verify the other axioms. So like that, this is also feeding into each other, and this is also a kind of science. But it has some of the advantages over the modern scientific epistemology. That is, the truth is not changing here. We can verify the truth. Like in the previous session, we discussed about there are so many proofs which are already written in the scriptures, and we can verify that by our scientific understanding recently. But here the truth is not changing. Whatever written in Bhagavad Gita, it is it is timeless wisdom, and it is not changing with time. There is no another version of the Bhagavad Gita, as there are many versions of atomic theory. The version of Bhagavad Gita is fixed, but that knowledge can be verified. So the Vedic knowledge is scientific because it is also has two processes, and that is feeding into each other. So this is also a scientific process. But Vedic knowledge is more reliable because the truth is not changing. So whatever the problem we are having in the scientific epistemology, because the truth is changing and the decisions made on the current truth may lead to a damage. So that is not there in case of Vedic epistemology. The Vedic knowledge is more reliable. It is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the creator of this universe, he knows everything. So whatever he will advise in the scriptures is the best for us. And we can also verify that. As our science developed, we have verified so many statements of the scriptures. And when in future science will develop more and more, and it will have access, more access to the universe, it will unlock many other truths that are already revealed in the scriptures. So there is no need to spend time to find the axioms. So this is the benefit we are getting. If we accept the Vedic epistemology and we accept the scriptures, so there is no need to spend time to experiment and find axioms. And this can be verified according to our capacity. Like a street dog or a tree, they cannot verify anything because they don't have any, uh, they don't have improved consciousness. But humans do have improved consciousness. And due to the fact they can verify some of the statements with their logical and reasonable understanding. But when we develop our consciousness more and more by executing the process of yoga or bhakti yoga, then we can verify more and more. So scriptures are true, but that can be verified according to our own capacity. And we can increase our capacity by the execution of the bhakti yoga. So that is the essence of this. So we are seeing that Vedic epistemology is actually having some advantages because of the unchanging nature of the truth and verifiable nature of the truth. But that verification is according to our own capacity. Like the yogis in the earlier days, they developed their consciousness to a certain level that they have full faith on the scriptures because they can verify the whole scripture because their consciousness is verified. Sorry, the consciousness is developed for them. We can also verify, but as we are, our consciousness is not as developed as the yogis, we can verify up to certain extent, but the yogis can verify actually the whole of the scripture or most of it. So this is experimentally variable. So that is why we see that in Bhagavad Gita Krishna is telling that it is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So when you realize the fact, then you can conclude Bhakti Yoga is very realizable because you are actually experiencing. So you also know that Srila Prabhupada wrote this Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is the exact version of Bhagavad Gita, and he presented the opinion of Krishna as it is. So that actually transformed millions of lives. There are many commentators on Bhagavad Gita before, but those Bhagavad Gitas could not create any kind of effect or much effect in the society. But the Bhagavad Gita as it is of Srila Prabhupada, in which Srila Prabhupada represented the philosophy as it is, as Krishna wanted, it actually transformed millions of lives and affected the lives of people in a positive manner. So in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3 also we see that it is told that Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam. So we see that scriptures are very, very important and they have a lot of advantages and they are authentic also. So now how means what kind of scriptures we have to read? So reading the whole Vedic literature and coming into a conclusion may be a Herculean task for all of us. But that task actually is done by Srila Vyasadeva. He is the compiler of all the Vedas and he actually wrote a summary or commentary on all the Vedic literatures. That is why it is told that Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of all Vedic literatures. So if you only concentrate on Srimad Bhagavatam, we can know all the knowledge which are actually important in the Vedic literatures and all the conclusions. We also saw that there are many predictions in Srimad Bhagavatam like of Kali Yuga, the incarnations, where and where the incarnations will take place and what will happen in the age of Kali. So the scriptural predictions are matching. So in a word, if we cannot read the whole Vedic literature, if we read only Srimad Bhagavatam, that will serve our purpose. So now we are good to go to start the next session, which is the supremacy of Krishna. Because we know that scriptures are like our mothers and Supreme Lord is Father. So if you want to know the Father, you must have faith on Mother. Like a newborn baby, he does not know about who is his father. His mother is the only authority whom he can believe, and she can point out to the father. If the whole world says no, this person is not your father, but the mother is saying yes, this person is your father, then the authority goes to the mother, because the mother is the only person who knows in truth who is the father of the child. So in case of determining the father, the mother becomes more important than all the people of this world assembled. Similarly, in finding the nature of the absolute truth, or finding the supreme personality of Godhead, the opinion of scriptures is the most important. Therefore, before starting this topic, supremacy of Krishna, I actually uh, recap that whole thing of why scriptures are important. Because based on scriptures only, we can know Krishna. So let us start. The Supreme Lord is Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja means that the person whom we cannot understand by our material senses. So if you say that I cannot see God, that means He is not there. So this is obvious that our gross elements, we have these gross elements, right? Like earth, water, fire, air, ether, and our body is made up of that. And then beyond that is the subtle matters like mind, intelligence, and false ego. And beyond that, the spiritual substance or spirit soul. So Lord's body is made up of Satchid Ananda, the same composition as the spirit soul. So how can we see Lord? We cannot see even the subtle matters, right? The mind, intelligence, false ego we cannot see. The subtle body is not visible to us, is not accessible to any of our senses. So then how by our senses we can understand Lord? That is not possible. So therefore we have to take the help of the scriptures to understand Lord. As it was discussed in our last session, that we have to see everything with Shastra Chakshu, with the eye of the scripture. So there are so many gods in our Hindu culture: Lakshmi, Shiva, Durga, Kali, Ganesh, right? There are so many options. So does that mean there are 33 crore gods, or the same God is having all these forms, or what is the truth? Let us explore. Who is the supreme among these 33 crore gods? They're actually demigods, but let's say for now 33 crore gods. So what is the definition of God by Parashara Muni? Aisarvyasya samagrasya virjasya jasasasya jnana vairagyayasteva shannam bhagaritin gana. So Bhagavan, this is mentioned in the Vishnu Puran by Parashara Muni, that who is Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is thus defined by Parashara Muni as one who is full in 6 opulences, who has full strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. So the personality who is actually full in all these 6 qualities or 6 opulences, like the personality must possess all strength, all fame, all wealth, all knowledge, all beauty, and all renunciation, can be called as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But nobody in this world can claim that I have all these 6 opulences in full. We may have in some portion, but the definition of God is you must possess all the 6 opulences in full quantity. So that cannot be claimed by anyone in this world. So by exploring the Shastras, we know that Krishna is a personality who is Supreme Personality of Godhead, SPOG, who is satisfying actually all these 6 opulences, and he is possessing them in full quantity. We will explore that how Krishna possesses all these 6 opulences in full quantity. Now the demigods are universal managers. So whatever we are seeing, that Lakshmi, actually Lakshmi is a different tattva, Shakti tattva. So all others like Indra, Chandra, Varun, right, Agni, they are actually demigods. Like in a company, there is a owner and he has several managers to manage different departments. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and different demigods are actually looking over all the universal affairs. Like Indra is looking the department of rain, Agni, fire, Vayu, wind. So like that. So all the demigods are working under the instruction of Krishna, and Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can see when there is any problem, it is mentioned in the Shastras that whenever there is a problem, all the demigods headed by Brahma, They assemble on the banks of the Shir Sagar and they meditate on Shirdokosai Vishnu. And then Vishnu appears and Vishnu instructs Lord Brahma and they get a solution for their problem. So, about the supremacy of Krishna, in the 12th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto 13th chapter, verse number 1, it is mentioned, Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Maruta Stunvanti Divyaistaver Vedai Sangha Padakramopanishada Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Jasyantam na vidusura suragana Devaya Tasmai Nama. So Ajam Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, Maruta, Stunvanti Dibbaistaver. So who is Krishna? Krishna is that personality unto whom Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, Maruta, all the demigods are glorifying him always by the Vedic hymns. So now we come to the point that how Krishna possesses these 6 opulences. So first, what was the quality? So there are 6 qualities, right? Aisaryasya samagrasya. Samagra means whole. Aisaryasya means wealth. Whole wealth. Viryasya. Viryasya means all strength. Jasasa means fame. Shriya means beauty. Jnana means knowledge. Vairagya means renunciation. So now, how Krishna possesses all wealth? So one can say, I am Lakpati, one can say I am Karodpati, one can say I am multi-billionaire. But Krishna is Lakshmipati. Lakshmi is the goddess from whom all the wealth are emanating. So Krishna is the or Vishnu is the possessor of that Lakshmi. So he possesses all wealth in this way. Virya. So Aisharyasya Samagrasya Viryasya Jasasasriya. So Virya means strength. Krishna is possessing all strength. What Krishna did during the heavy rainfall in Vrindavan, Krishna actually lifted the Govardhani hill with the help of the little finger of his left hand for 7 days and 7 nights. So we see there are so many wrestlers available in our world and sumo wrestlers and many weightlifters. So they lift how much? 100 kg, 200 kg, 300 kg at max. Then that may be the maximum limit. But Krishna is lifting the whole Govardhan hill. But if you carefully see Krishna, he is not at all stressed. We see to lift lift the weight of 100 kg. What happens to the face of the weightlifter? But in case of Krishna, you see, he is standing very gracefully with the right hand on his waist, and he is looking at all the Brajavasis and happily with the help of the little finger of his left hand, he is lifting the Govardhan hill, which is millions of tons in weight. So this is the example where Krishna is showing he is the possessor of all strength. Now Yasa or the fame, we can see that what is this material world? This material world is a place where people do not accept Krishna. People are not devotees. So this is the place where people are not devotees. There also we see so many people. Everybody knows who is Krishna. Almost everybody in this earth knows who is Krishna. And we see in the Rath Yatra of Jagannath, you can clearly see the fame of Jagannath. So even in the place where people don't want to be devotees of Krishna, Krishna is having so much fame. So what to speak of the spiritual world where everyone is a devotee? And this material creation is only 1/4 of the total creation. So you can think of what is the amount of fame Krishna is possessing. Now Shriya. Shriya means all beauty. So an example is that Kamadev or Madanadev or Cupid is known to be very beautiful. And Cupid actually charms all of us. The lust is invoked in our heart by the influence of the arrows thrown by the Cupid. So Cupid is a very charming personality and we all get captivated by him. But when that Cupid wanted to captivate Krishna, Krishna just looked at him, and he was actually captivated by the beauty of Krishna. That is why it is told in Brahma Samhita, Venum Kwanantama Ravinda Dalaya Taksham Barahavatam Samashitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Maniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Not only one Cupid, Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham. If you assemble the beauty of Koti or millions of Cupids together, that will also be a very, very tiny part of the beauty of Krishna. So that is the beauty Krishna possesses. That is why he is told Madana Mohan, one who can mohit Madan also. The personality who can charm the Cupid also is known as Madana Mohan. Now Jnana. In 48 minutes, in a restless situation of Kurukshetra war, Krishna delivered this Bhagavad Gita. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions, ज्ञानं तेहं स विज्ञानम् इदं वक्ष्यामि अशेषतः यद्गत्वानेह भूयन्नात् यत्त्वभ्यम् अवशिष्यते. If you know this knowledge, then there is nothing in this world for you to know further. So that is the topmost. Bhagavad Gita is considered to be the topmost authority of all philosophical books, where you can find the solution to all problems. Like there was a chart I saw, maybe Andre Prabhu was once sharing, that there is solution to every problem. If you are feeling angry, there is solution to it. If you are feeling lusty, solution to it. You are confused, solution to it. So all the problems of life, we have solutions in Bhagavad Gita. So that is why Krishna is possessing the supreme knowledge, and he is expressing the whole knowledge in 48 minutes. So we can think, to compose one verse also we may take several days. Krishna is telling 700 slokas of Bhagavad Gita in 48 minutes, and that consists of the all knowledge of the whole universe. Then Vairagya. In spite of being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna is taking a humble position to become the chariot driver of Arjuna. If you know the truth that in the battlefield, how the warrior actually behaves with his chariot driver, because in the battlefield there is so much noise, the chariot driver cannot see in which direction he has to drive. So what the warrior does actually, that if the warrior is kicking the chariot driver with right leg, then the chariot driver is supposed to go to the right direction. If he is kicking with the left leg, then chariot driver goes to the left direction. So in spite of being the supreme personality of Godhead and possessing all these opulences in full, Aisarjasa Samagrasa Virijasa Jasasa Shriya Jnana, but he is also possessing the quality of renunciation to the topmost degree. That is why he is humble enough to accept the kick from his devotee in spite of being the supreme personality of Godhead, right? So this is how Krishna is possessing all these qualities, and it is only applicable for Krishna, and nobody in this material world can claim to have all these six qualities in full. So now we will hear from Brahma. So sometimes people think that, oh, this Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwar, these three Dev, they are actually supreme. Some say that Brahma supreme, some say that Vishnu supreme, some say that Shiva supreme. So we will analyze that. What Brahma is telling. We may say Brahma is supreme, but what Brahma is telling, that is important. So first of all, Brahma is created from the navel of Garbhodakoshayi Vishnu. So Brahma is taken birth from a lotus flower which is emanating from the navel of Garbhodakoshayi Vishnu. In Brahma Samhita, the first verse, Brahma is making the point very clear. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. So in the first verse, Brahma is kicking out all the misconceptions about who is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he is establishing the fact that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Now in Brahma Samhita later on, Brahma is accepting what is about him, what is his position, what is Brahma's position. So he is explaining the position of himself in this verse. Bhasman yathashma sakalesu nijeshu teja Shriyam kiyat prakatayattapi tadbadatra Brahma jajesha bhagnanda vidhana karta Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom the separated subjective portion Brahma receives his power for the regulation of this mundane world, just as the sun manifests some portion of his own light in all the effulgent gems that bear the names of Suryakanta. So here Brahma is telling us that I am nothing but a Suryakanta stone. So what is about Suryakanta stone? So Suryakanta stone is a gem which is actually very glittering. And but if you keep that gem inside a dark room, it will not glitter. So Brahma is accepting the fact that although it may seem that I am the creator of this universe, people say like Brahma is creating the universe. Yeah, that is true. But Brahma is a secondary creator. So Brahma is telling that I am the secondary creator. As the Suryakanta stone glitters by getting the sun rays from the sun, so Krishna is like that sun from whom I am getting the energy and I am creating this material world, and that is why people see me as I am glittering. So this is the position of Brahma. So Brahma actually receives the knowledge of how to create this material world from Krishna. Krishna gives him power, Krishna gives him knowledge. He is just the instrument in the hand of Krishna. So Brahma is accepting that fact that people think I am glittering, but let me accept the truth that it is the sun by whose effulgence I am only reflecting the effulgence of the sun. So I don't have actually credit. The credit actually goes to Krishna. So now we see another verse also. Brahma speaks about what is the position of other demigods like Ganesha. We know that Ganesha is known as Bigna Vinashak. He can destroy all the obstacles. So how he is getting that power? It is also coming from Krishna. Yatpada pallava yugam vinidhaya kumbha dvande pranama shamaye saganadi rajaha Bignan vihantumalamasya jagatrayasya Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, whose lotus feet are always held by the Ganesha upon the pair of tumuli protruding from his elephant head in order to obtain the power for his function of destroying all the obstacles on the path of progress of the three worlds. So we are seeing that Lord Ganesha is actually getting that power to destroy all the obstacles, and it is actually coming from Krishna, one incarnation of Krishna or Narasimhadev. So he is getting that Vinashak Kshamata or power from Narasimhadev or Krishna. And in the another verse 5.45, Brahma explains the position of Lord Shiva. Sometimes this is a big conflict that Shiva is supreme or Krishna is supreme. So Brahma is making the point clear. Shiram jatha adadi vikara vishesha jogat sanjayate nahi tatha pritagasti heto yah shambhutam api tatha shamupaiti karyat govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of the acids, but yet the effect of curd is neither same as nor different from its cause or the milk. So I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Sambhu is a transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. So this is a beautiful analogy that if Vishnu is considered to be the milk, then Shiva is like the curd or yogurt. So in one sense, Shiva is non-different from Vishnu because the curd is generated from milk. They are having the same constitution. But there is also another thing that milk can be converted into curd, but curd cannot be revived back into the milk. So it is told that Lord Brahma is possessing 50 qualities. Lord Shiva is possessing 55 qualities. Then Vishnu is possessing 60 qualities, and Krishna is possessing 64 qualities. There are 4 extra qualities Krishna is having, that is Venu Madhuri, Rupa Madhuri, Leela Madhuri, and Prem Madhuri. So the sweetness aspect of Krishna. So we will discuss about Krishna and Vishnu later. There is a minute difference, but for now we can assume they are same personality. Now, so what Brahma is telling, that this Shiva and Vishnu, they are essentially same, but Shiva is a different form of Vishnu in which he is doing the work of destruction. Actually, Vishnu never directly interferes with this material nature. To interfere with this material nature, he assumes the form of Shambhu or Lord Shiva. So that is the position of Lord Shiva. So he is a transformation from Vishnu, but because Vishnu has to interact with this material nature, he is reducing some of his qualities. So qualitatively, they are same also and different also. So this is the analogy used here. In essence, we can say that all of us are generated from Krishna. So Shiva is also coming from Krishna, right? So we are minute spiritual sparks and we are coming from Krishna. Krishna is our origin. So the origin of Shiva is also Krishna. So Krishna is the origin of everything. And everyone has a different duty. As we are very minute spiritual sparks, we have the duty to serve Krishna. Shiva is a bigger portion or a important spark, more important spark than all of us. That is why we are told as Jiva Tattvas, but Lord Shiva is a separate Tattva, Shiva Tattva, which is higher than Jiva Tattva. So Shiva is more important part of Krishna than all of us. But everyone has the origin same as Krishna. So now Lord Shiva is speaking in Padma Puran. So let us hear from him. What is his opinion? So this is Lord Shiva. So in Padma Puran, Lord Shiva is speaking to Mother Parvati. Aradhananam sarve aradhanam param tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarchanam. So Durga Devi or Parvati Devi actually asked that I want to do some worship. So whom should I worship? Who is the topmost deity in the whole creation? Lord Shiva told the goddess Durga, my dear Devi, although the Vedas recommend the worship of demigods, the worship of Lord Vishnu is topmost. However, above the worship of Lord Vishnu is the rendering service of Vaishnavas who are related to Lord Vishnu. So here is one statement. This can be sometimes misunderstood, that Vedas recommend the worship of the demigods. So let me clarify that Veda is like the mother, as I told, and the mother has to take care of all kinds of children. So there are some children who are only concerned about material benefit. They don't have any interest in spiritual understanding. So therefore, Vedas also, for those those who seek for material benefits, Vedas also tell the demigod worship. But they also enjoin that you should not worship the demigods. That is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. And after worshipping the demigod and giving and getting the material benefits, ultimately they come to the conclusion that okay, all these material benefits are actually futile. So if I get some punya also, I will enjoy for some time in the swarga, then again I have to come back and suffer. So better get out of this material world, and for that we have to practice the bhakti yoga or devotional service. So that is why I told that if we directly take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, we get a shortcut, the way out to this material world. But if we go to read the whole Vedic literatures, as the Vedic literature is meant to uplift all kinds of people, so this may also happen that we are reading some portion which are actually meant for the categories of people who are below us. But if we read Srimad Bhagavatam, it is of the best category. In the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is told, Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmat saranam param vedyam vastavam atra vastu sivadam tapotrayan mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Parai Ishvara Saddo Ridyavaruddha Tetra Kritivi Shushushuvis Tatshanat. So Srimad Bhagavatam is eliminating all those sub-religions. Like it is only speaking of the highest standard, pure devotional service. So that is why if we take the shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, then our route is actually becomes perpendicular. Like a distance of a point from a straight line is shortest if we take the perpendicular distance. So that is Srimad Bhagavatam. If you go to read the whole Vedic literature, you will come to the same point, but it will take so much time. In the meantime, you may also deviate from the path of spirituality, and that may be disastrous. So now Lord Shiva further speaks. Ram Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Vistulyam Ramanama Baranane. Lord Shiva is telling that I chant the holy name of Ram, 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 and thus enjoy the beautiful sound. This holy name of Ramachandra is equal to 1000 holy names of Lord Vishnu. So yeah, this Ramachandra, Vishnu, they are all incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But according to the mood of the incarnation, they bestow the degree of mercy. Like in the incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is very, 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 very kind. So similarly, the incarnation of Ramchandra is more kind than the incarnation of Vishnu. So that is why if you chant the name of Ram, you get the more benefit. But that is the secondary thing. The primary thing is that Lord Shiva is deriving pleasure from chanting the names of Lord Ram. That means he is devotee of Lord Ram. So the misconception is broken. Shiva is not claiming himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he is claiming himself to be the devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Krishna, or Ramachandra. In another place, Lord Shiva is telling, Mukti Pradata Sarvesham Vishnu Revana Samsaya. So this is also one confirmation that Lord Vishnu is above these three modes of material nature. That is why he is called Adhokshaja. So if someone is inside a well, who can uplift him? Someone who is outside the well, right? If you are yourself not outside the well, how can you help a person who is inside the well? So that personality is Vishnu. Vishnu is the personality who is beyond this material nature. If you want mukti, if you want to get rid of this material nature, and if you want to surpass the sufferings of this world, you must take shelter of Vishnu. So that is confirmed by Lord Shiva also, that nobody else Vishnu can benedict you with liberation. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam is confirming again. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.28 Ete cham sakala pumsha krishnastu bhagavan swayam indradivyākulam loke mridayanti yuge yuge. All of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Krishna is the original supreme personality of God. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheist. The Lord incarnates to protect the theist. So this is also Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. This line confirms the supremacy of Krishna. Krishna has told in Bhagavad Gita also that Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham. So that is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. So now another verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Nimnaganam yatha ganga devanam achyuto yatha vaishnavanam yatha shambhu purananam idam tata. So this is a very beautiful verse. Nimna ganam yatha ganga. Nimna means downwards. Ganam means one who is going. So who goes downwards? It is the rivers. Rivers, according to the law of gravity, they go downwards. So among Nimna Ganam means among all the rivers, who is the best? Ganga. Ganga is considered to be the most pure of all rivers. And then Devanam Achyuto Yatha. What we learn from all the verses, that among all the demigods and all the personalities, Krishna or Achyuta is the supreme. Lord Achyuta is the supreme among deities. And then the third line is very important. Vaishnavanam Jatha Shambhu. Shambhu or Lord Shiva is the topmost devotee or the greatest Vaishnava. So Vaishnava means who are the devotees of Vishnu. So if you rank the devotees of Vishnu, Shiva comes in the top of the list. So this is again very much clarified that Shiva is actually the devotee of Krishna or Vishnu. Purananam idam tatha. And among all the Puranas, this Bhagavad Puran is, or the Srimad Bhagavatam is the greatest. That I already told you. So Vyasadeva himself is writing. While writing this Srimad Bhagavatam, he is mentioning that among all the Puranas I have written previously, this is the best. Because there are so many editions of a book of the author, same author. So Vyasadeva actually wrote this Srimad Bhagavatam. This was his final work. So if the author is giving his final work in Srimad Bhagavatam, he has gained the most experience and then he has written this Srimad Bhagavatam. And after writing Srimad Bhagavatam, he was completely satisfied and he stopped writing. So that is why Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost. Another verse, यथा तरुर्मूलनिषेचनेन तृप्यन्ति तत्स्कन्धभुजोपशाखा प्राणोपहाराच्च यथेन्द्रियाणां तथैव सर्वार्हणमच्युतेज्य. If we pour water on the root of a tree, that energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else. And similarly, supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body. And in the same way, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Krishna, through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. So, like individually, if you, like in a banyan tree or something, uh, someone is having a lots of leaves, then you cannot individually water all the leaves, right? So you water in the root. So if you worship Krishna, all the demigods are actually satisfied. One example can be given that we know we all have the electric bill and we pay for that in the electric office. So where we are meant to pay the bill, inside the office, the person who is the in charge of accepting the bills, to that person we must pay. But if we pay the security guard who is standing outside the electric office, what will happen? He will keep that in his pocket, right? And some days later, the same security guard will come into your home and cut the electric line. So what was your fault? That you did not water in the root. You actually tried to water all the leaves. So like that, if you only water on the leaves, if you do not water in the root, then what will happen? By the scorching sun, the water may evaporate and the root will remain dry and the tree will die. So like that, if you worship Krishna, all other demigods are satisfied. But if you worship the satisfied, you are actually not paying your debt or you are not worshipping in a proper manner. So then, Krishna actually speaks in Bhagavad Gita. Matta parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutremani ganaiva. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. So Krishna is telling that as we see in a necklace of pearls, we only can see the pearls. Like in this picture, I intentionally kept the threads also. But generally you don't see the thread, right? You only see the necklaces. But imagine what will happen if the thread is not there. The necklaces, the pearls will not stay in proper place and everything will get destroyed. So like that, Krishna is telling, although I am not seen, but I am actually maintaining everything. Due to me, all the things are in proper position. Also in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Krishna is telling, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam bhuda bhava shamanvita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So did you find any kind of uh, discrepancy in the statements of Brahma, Krishna and Shiva? They are all pointing to the same truth, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is no confusion anymore. Now in Bhagavad Gita 5.29 also Krishna is declaring Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasham Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Shantim Ichchate. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of the material miseries. So Krishna is telling, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So this is also confirmed. But at the same time, Krishna is Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. He is the friend of all living entities. So this is called the peace formula of Bhagavad Gita. If we know this in truth, that Krishna is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifices, Krishna is Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, or the Supreme Lord, and Krishna is at the same time my friend, then we can be at peace. Again in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham vidhi sannivishto mattah smritirjnanam apohanam cha vedaishcha sarverhameva vidyo vedantakrit veda videva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. So this is the key statement. By all the Vedas, what is the purpose of all the Vedas? To know Krishna. To know Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to be engaged in His devotional service. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta and I am the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna only compiled the Vedanta as Vyasdev. So now, Shetasvatara Upanishad also says, Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate, na tat samascha vyadhikascha drishyate, parasya shaktir vividaiva shruyate, swabhaviki jnana bala kriya cha. The Supreme Lord is one without a second. He has nothing to do personally, nor does he have material senses. So all the senses of Krishna are spiritual in nature. No one is equal to him or greater than him. So this is also a confirmation that Krishna is the supreme. No one is equal to him or greater than him. Na tat samash means no one is equal. Cha abhya adhikascha drishyate. Adhik means greater. No one is greater than Krishna. Parasya shaktir vividaiva shruyate swabhaviki jnana bala kriya. Krishna has multifarious energies, right? He has unlimited variegated potencies of different names which exist within him as autonomous attributes and provide him full knowledge, power, and pastimes. So Krishna does not have to do anything personally. All the energies are acting on his behalf. So that is why it is mentioned that Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tatha Adi Ante Cha Madhye Cha Hari Sarvatra Giyate. So if you read the Ved, Ramayan, Puran, Mahabharat, Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tatha, what you will find? Adi Ante Cha Madhye Cha. Adi means in the beginning, Ante means in the end, and Madhye means in the middle also. What you will find? Hari Sarvatra Giyate. Hari, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, is always glorified in all these literatures. Vede, Ramayane, Chaiva, Purane, Bharate, Tatha. Adi, Ante, Cha, Madhya, Cha. In the beginning, in the end, and in the middle, Krishna is only glorified. That is why Krishna is telling, Vedaischa sarve ahameva vedyo. Throughout all the Vedic literatures, there is only one message which Vyasdeva is wanting us to actually accept. That is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you are a living entity and part and parcel of Krishna. You should develop a lovely relationship with Krishna in the form of devotional service. So that is the essence. So this ends our today's session. So thank you.